In this video, I'm going to be teaching you how to create surf ramps in Blender using curves and SVG files. I'm going to assume that you can use Blender quite well and that you already know about exporting and compiling models to get them into whatever source game you're making them for. This video is not going to cover any of that. If you know nothing about that, I'd suggest watching my beginner video first. The link is in the description. The ramps we're going to be making need to be made flat so that they won't cause ramp bugs and glitchy physics, but I'll explain that as we get going. So let's start by creating our mesh from a curve. So to add a curve, we go Shift A, Curve, and Bezier. I've created a really large one with a radius of 4096, just so you can see what's going on. Now, it's super important that you never edit this curve when you're in the 3D view, because you will inadvertently add height and twists to it. And these ramps only work if they are completely flat on the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to go into top-down orthographic view. Now what this allows me to do is move these as I please without having to worry about them ever going up or down. So I'm going to create the shape I want by moving these and then selecting the next one and then pressing E to extrude outwards, and I'm just going to create a kind of spiral. I'm going to speed this up so you don't have to watch me move all these, but just make sure that anytime you're editing the curve, you're in the top-down view. Okay, so I'm happy with this shape. It's more or less where I want it. It might be a bit too narrow, but anyway, it's fine for now. So before you turn this into a mesh, you're going to make sure that you've got it completely flat. So go into one of the side views and have a check, and that looks fine. Okay, so we're going to want to select our curve, go to Object, Convert to, and then Mesh from Curve. And now this means we can select the edges of these and we can edit this as a mesh. Before I do that though, I'm just going to increase the subdivision of the curve before I convert it. And I'm just going to select them all in segments, subdivide, just to make it more smooth. Okay, so I'll do that again, convert to mesh. Then once I've done that, I can extrude, these edges, go to edge select and then extrude the edges. And now I want these to be the height of my ramps. So once I've done that, I can add a modifier. I want to add a solidify modifier, and I'm going to make double thick ramps, so with ramps on either side. And I'm going to make my 1024 thickness, and the offset is going to be in the center. Now I want to turn on even thickness and high quality normals, just to improve the overall effect. Okay, so once we're happy with that, we apply that modifier. And now we want to select the top faces of our mesh. So I'll go to Circle Select and Orthographic View to do this quickly. And you've got to make sure that you don't select the sides, so make sure you keep this central. And then check that you haven't, and all looks well. And then press Shift H to hide the unwanted faces. Press Ctrl R to add a loop cut on this top one. And then press Alt H once you've selected the faces to unhide them. Okay, so now we want to select these edges over here and make sure you have snapping on and snap to vertex selected, and then going to want to press G to move these and then snap them to the bottom, and then do the same for this side, G to move them, snap them to the bottom. Now before we go any further, we're going to want to clean this up. So we go to select all the faces, merge by distance, and change this to 0.01 or something, slightly higher than the default, just so that we make sure that we merge all of these faces and clean them up. And there we have our mesh, more or less completed. We're just going to want to change the shading, so select all, go into face select, shade smooth, and then click on auto smooth. So now we're going to want to create the physics mesh from this mesh. So we're going to duplicate that, turn off the visible mesh so that we just have this one, turn off auto smooth because we don't want that anymore. And now we want to go into orthographic mode, go into X-ray mode. Oopsie, go into X-ray mode. And then what we want to do here, we want to select every other segment here. If you don't know why I'm doing this, you should have watched the original video just so you understand. So I'm going to skip ahead now, and hopefully I don't screw this up. Okay, so once you've selected all those, turn X-ray mode off, and then just check that you have indeed done every other segment. And that looks fine to me. So once you're happy with this selection, press P to separate that into its own object. Now you have these two objects here. Now we're going to want to put the faces in between these segments here. So I want to select one, go into edit mode, select all the faces, and I'll put X-ray mode on so you can see what's happening. And then we're going to press F to put faces in between all these objects, and we're going to do the same for the other object. And then now that you've done that, you're going to want to join these two together. So Control J to join, and then just check that you've got the mesh right. So each of these segments should look like this, basically, with a little shiny thing in the middle, and that way we know that everything went right with the physics mesh. Okay, so that is the physics mesh done. Now I'm just going to quickly UV unwrap my visible mesh. So I'm just going to go over to UV edit mode. I've got my texture already set up here. I'm going to want to add a material. I'm going to add my apple material, which is what this is going to be called. And then I'm going to select all these faces and reset. So what this does is it basically resets the UV so that they are square and that they fill up the entire UV space there. So it looks like my inner ones are not around the right way, so I'll select all those and then rotate them so that they are around the right way. And then the bottom one I'm not going to be too concerned about. So I'm happy enough with that. It could probably be increased a bit to prevent this repetition, but honestly, oops, select all of those. Anyway, I'm happy enough with it. You can edit it how you want. Okay, so now I am going to get these in the game and you can see how well they surf and how well they look. Okay, so here I am in game, and as you can see we have our spiral ramp here. So I'm just going to surf on it. I'm going to surf, oh fucking hell. Oh boy. Okay. It's going to be one of those days, is it? Okay. So I'm going to surf the inside and the outside so you can see how well they surf, and that there's no issues with ramp bugs on either side of the mesh, and that they surf really well. So here's the outside and here's the inside. I put a boost here so I get more speed. There we go. And so yeah, the main important thing is that you create these so that they are perfectly flat. If you do that, they're going to be just as surfable as brush-based ramps. They are going to be susceptible to the same ramp bug that brush-based ramps are, so that doesn't fix anything because they use essentially the same physics. And so yeah, that is how you create a ramp like this, a more free-flowing ramp from curves. Now I'm going to show you how you can create a ramp like this, but from an SVG file. Say cheese. So go to File, Import, SVG, Scalable Vector Graphics, and then navigate to where your SVG file is. Mine is here, and then that will import it. And you will notice that it's absolutely tiny. And if I just create this cube the size of our ramp, our SVG file is buried way down in here, so we're going to need to scale it. The amount you have to scale it would depend on how big your ramps are and how big the imported SVG is, but I already know how big I'm going to scale it, so I'm just going to do that now. 128,000. So you do have to scale it quite large, and so there we go. Now you will notice that it came imported with a texture, so we're going to want to remove that. And it also filled in these faces of the leaf of this logo. So we're going to want to delete all of those and clean it up a bit. So to do that, we want to first convert this object this SVG curve into an editable mesh. So we select it, go to Object, and then we go Convert to Mesh from Curve. And now you will see we can select these edges and do what we want to them. So first I'm going to select, if I can, that doesn't seem to work. Just trying to figure out the quickest way to do this. Let's just go Face Select and then select the faces. And then we're going to make sure we get all of them. There's one hiding over here. I got you. And there we go. And then delete. Can we dissolve faces? Yeah, that'll work. And then we notice we got a bit of cleanup to do. So let's just delete this edge and delete that edge as well. So now you should have gotten rid of all of those. That's good. And then you want to select all of them. Go to Alt-M, Merge, and then by distance. So we're removing any double vertices that were there. So now our whole thing is completely joined together in a complete loop. So once we've done that, I'm just going to move my curve into my scene collection and get rid of the one that came imported. You don't have to do that, but just to do a bit of cleanup. Now what we're going to want to do is go to Edit Mode, select all the edges, extrude on the Z axis by how high we want our ramps to be. And we're going to have our ramps be this high. Okay, so once we have that, we now want to apply a modifier to this mesh. And so we go to our Modifier tab, Add Modifier, and we're going to want to add a Solidify modifier. And as you can see, if I change this, it's actually not corresponding to the units I want. So what I forgot to do was to go to the object, go to Apply, and then apply the scale that we scaled it by. And now, if I solidify it, yeah, this should work. So I want mine to be 512 units wide. So these are the width of my ramps. And I'm going to want to click Even Thickness and High Quality Normals. That just cleans up any kind of rough part we get. So I'm going to click Apply and then check out my mesh. And so most of it looks good. You want to check for weird little bits. These corners were quite sharp, so we've got these overlapping faces that we're going to need to deal with. So I'm going to do that now. I might fast forward through this depending on how long I take, but I'm just going to show you how I'd get started. I'd probably go to X-ray mode, go into the top view, and then see if I can clean up these. So I want to select the faces and then just clean up the ones I think I'm going to want to delete. That looks like all of them. And delete those faces. Oh, where have I gone? Okay. So there's a few more things I need to clean up, and so we'll do that. Faces. Okay. So that looks pretty good. I'm quite happy with how that turned out, and we can fix those easily. And we're just going to do the same to this other side. So let's paint select all the overlapping ones we want to get rid of. And that looks good. And then delete those faces. Okay, so we've cleaned that up quite well, I think. But we're obviously going to want to rejoin this shape together to make it as it was. I'm just going to do that now, and I will fast forward because it will take a while. But your mileage may vary depending on what logo you import, whether you have to do a lot of cleanup or just a little bit. But essentially what you're doing is creating new faces and filling up any holes that the overlapping faces caused. So I'm going to do that now. So as you can see, I've now filled in those holes we had, but if we look at it in the top view, it obviously doesn't look as smooth and doesn't look like the logo anymore. So to fix that on this model, I'm going to select these, and I'm just going to eyeball it about to where I think it should be. Obviously you can take more time to fix these. But this looks okay if we just make this pointy like it was, like that, and then move this one in a bit so that it's more square. Okay, I'm happy with that. So the next step is we want to select all the edges around the outside, like so. And depending on which way you want to do the ramp, you can either do the inside edges or the outside edges. I'm going to do the outside edges here. So what we need to do is move this edge down to this bottom edge. To do that quickly, I like to put snapping on, and then I snap to vertex. So then when I move and I hover over the vertex, it just snaps straight down to it. And then I want to do this on here, on this one as well. So select all these and G, and then snap it down. So we have this is going to be outside and this is going to be inside. Okay, so we've created a bunch of double edges at the bottom now. So if I was to move these, you can see that there's still faces there. So we're going to want to use our Alt-M merge by distance again. And instead of using the default value, we're going to crank it up a bit. And you'll notice that we moved slightly more vertices that way. Okay, so now if I do that again, these should be joined together and there's no more faces hidden there. Okay, so great. So now we have our mesh completed. We're going to move on to do our physics mesh from this mesh. So the first step is to duplicate our mesh we made, hide that in the viewport, and then we have our duplicate that we're going to make the physics mesh from. So to do this quickly, we're going to want to go to X-ray mode, go to our orthographic top-down view, and now what we want to do is go into edit mode, press C, actually go into edit mode, select face select, and then press C, and then what we're going to want to do is to paint each segment, every other segment, so we can separate this model. What we're doing is we're making two separate physics objects so that we can create the faces in between them much more quickly than we would otherwise. And this is a necessary step to create the physics mesh correctly. But I'm just going to do this now and speed it up so that you don't have to watch me do this. So I'll see you on the other side. Okay, so there we have it. We want to go out of X-ray mode now so that we can check that we have done this correctly and just look for any faces that you have selected that you shouldn't have. But this looks fine to me. And so once you're happy with the selection, we're going to want to separate these objects. So we press P and then selection, and now we have two objects. We have this one and this one. So a quick way to get the faces, oh actually I've just noticed, so I did screw up slightly. I have included this face where I shouldn't have. So I'm going to separate that one out and then join it to the model it should be. And so that's correct now. I'll have another quick look just to make sure. And okay, yeah, I'm happy with that. So to create the faces in between, we go into edit mode, we select all the faces of our mesh we created, and we go toggle X-ray mode. You don't need to do this, but I'm just going to show you what happens. And then we press F, and what that does is it puts the faces in between. So if I go off X-ray mode, and now you can see those faces are there. And I'm going to do the same again for this one. And so I didn't do it with X-ray mode, and then I can check and it's fine. So now what we want to do is we want to shift select these together, Control J, and join them. And now our physics mesh is almost done. There's only one final step we need to do. We need to go into edit mode, have face select on, right click and go shade smooth. And that shades all our faces smooth. So I've also noticed that this one isn't correct for whatever reason. So I'm just going to undo that and just have a look why this one wouldn't work. So to have a little look, okay, so that looks fine. It's usually an edge issue which is causing this. Oh, I think this was the face that I had stuck back on. So how are we going to fix that? Let me undo all these steps and get back to when I did that. Okay, so it was here. So I had this was separate and I joined it back onto this. So I'll do that again. But what I want to do to this mesh now is go to Alt M merge by distance, and I've removed 4 vertices. So that's fixed that. So if you have that issue, that's why. So I'm just going to do these faces again real quick. Join these up. Control J to join, and then shade smooth. And now if we look, we'll see that that is correct. Cool. So that is our physics mesh done and our visible mesh done. Next, I'm going to go on to UV unwrapping. Okay, so before we UV unwrap this, we're just going to want to shade this smooth as well as our physics mesh just to improve the lighting. And we're going to want to go down to Object Data Properties, click on Normals and check Auto Smooth. And now the lighting is much better. So to UV unwrap, we just go to our UV editing. And I'm just going to set up the materials so that we can see what we're doing. I have a test texture I like to use, so I'm going to use that. I'm also going to make a material. I'll make a new one. I'm probably going to call my texture apple, so let's do that. Create an image texture and then open up my test image. And to see what I'm doing, I think there's already UVs, there must be. Oh, they're already all down there, so the whole ramp's blue. Okay, so what we want to do is go to UV and reset. And then what that does is it creates squares out of all of our UVs. And it looks like most of them are correct, except for the sides. The bottom looks good. And so we just need to fix that one. And so navigate to where they are. Select those faces you need to edit. It looks like it's all of this outside area here. So we want to select that loop, and then in our UV window we want to rotate those until they are straight. Oops, I am rotating by the 2D cursor and not the bounding box, so if that happens to you, you know how to fix that. And then we rotate them till they're the right way up. Now this is repeating way too much, I think, and you can go in and edit these UVs however you like, but this actually works quite well for the texture I'm going to use, and I'm going to show that in game shortly. So these UVs are fine for me, but your mileage may vary depending on what kind of effect you want. Oops, I just noticed that these inner ones are not right either, so let's just fix those. I'll select all of those inside faces. And then I think it's all of them that are around the right, the same wrong way. So let's rotate those that way. Okay, so we are done now with our UV unwrapping. Now I'm going to export this and compile it into TF2. And if you don't know how to do that, then you can watch my beginner video. But now I'm going to compile this and show you it in game. So here I am in TF2, and as you can see, we have our Apple logo. And I've used a wireframe texture, so you don't really have to worry about UV maps if you do this. The stretching and scaling, it doesn't really matter if you can't see the texture. As a pro tip there. So I'm going to surf this now, and you can see how well they surf. Ooh, there we go. I've got a boost there so I can get speed, as you can see. So generally speaking, these work really well. Full disclosure though, they're not perfect by any means. This isn't the be all and end all on how to create these kind of wraps. You do need to be really careful because, as I said, you can create non-convex shapes when you create these ramps using curves, so you have to be super careful. But as you can see, if we surf this for a while, you'll notice that you don't really get stuck anywhere. The one thing I have noticed is that on these outward curves, sometimes if you're going super slow, you will get stuck. But you have to go so slow that it's kind of irrelevant. I've only noticed it when I've screwed up on the ramp anyway. So yeah, generally speaking, they're really really surfable, and you don't necessarily get way more ramp glitches. I'm just going to show you what I mean by glitching when it's super slow, when you're going super slow, and you can see for yourself what I mean. So I'll just go on this section here and then go super slow, and I'm surfing and everything's fine. And let's go even slower. You see I'm getting stuck. I'm not actually holding strafe in any way, and I'm stuck. So if I crouch I can get out of that. So yeah, if you're going like this slow, that might happen. But generally speaking, if you're going that slow on a ramp, you've already fucked up somehow. But you should bear in mind that you should be careful when you create these ramps, and you should test them to make sure they are good enough. If you've got a map full of these ramps and every ramp is made like this, you should test it thoroughly just to make sure that it's all okay. So yeah, that's how you create surf ramps from SVG logos using Blender. I hope you found this interesting. I hope you learned a little bit. And if you have any questions for me, just leave them in the comments and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. So thanks for watching, and good luck.